Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. This is Daniel Torres here, really enjoying the Mediterranean summer after a hectic half one of the year, which has included being on the road a lot at big shows like NRF, CES, Shop Talk, US, Shop Talk, Europe. Dinners, we did a fantastic series of dinners with our friends at Nielsen IQ. And also a collaboration with another dinner with VML, for example, that was pretty memorable. But yeah, and where were we last week? We were at Cannes with our friends, the CPG guys, and we were able to do the FMCG Guys podcast with my dear co-host, Efrain Rosario, who's also co-hosting with me today. Hi, Efrain, how are you?
Hi, Daniel. Nice to see you. Albeit not in person, but still good nevertheless.
Well, I mean, you saw me during Shop Talk. We did 3 very intense events. You saw me in Cannes. I think you deserve a rest of Daniel for a while.
Well, it's my summer holidays coming up, so I think we'll all get a rest.
What are your plans? What are your plans for the summer?
So I will be enjoying the Mediterranean summer as well for the first half, and then going to Japan at the end of August.
No way! I have an exclusive for you today. I'm actually moving the WW Partners FMCG Guys headquarters temporarily in August from Barcelona to Bali. So I'll be based in Bali for the second half of August and part of September. We actually considered going through Japan, so it's a pity we're not doing that. We could have hung out there and doing it would have been fun to do a podcast in Japan.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think from a FMCG retail standpoint, it's certainly a very interesting market. But I think Asia Pacific overall, I think you'll still get some of that. And let's be honest, no one's going to argue with you going to Bali.
I guess not. Also, it's been a fantastic season this year for our respective football teams. Your team, which I don't know how you support, PSG, Champions League winners for second time in a row. At least they have a Barca fan as a manager, Luis Enrique, so pretty good.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm a big Luis Enrique fan. I think he's transformed the team and the culture. And as the T-shirts here say, it was never going to be just one. So let's see if we go for the treble, if we go for the third.
Let us win it next year. I think that after more than 10 years, we deserve it. And actually, we're accompanied by 2 people that actually are linked to our recent Shop Talk events, because we have our friend Marco Kormann with us from AWS. How are you? One of our star sponsors at our Yacht Club event. How are you? Have you recovered from that?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me. Yeah, Shop Talk was a great event. Really loved it. A lot of energy. And June in general has been a super busy month with a lot of different conferences.
Fantastic. And it was a fun also partnership with you guys at the Yacht Club. I think we got a lot of known faces of the FMCG and retail world. So thanks for partnering with us in that, and hopefully the first of many.
It was a great event. Yeah, no, thank you.
A lot of pictures out there, by the way. If anyone went to the event and wants the pictures, I have them, so let me know. The other guest that we have today is actually somebody that as we were preparing for the podcast, we've learned something very interesting about him, is that he was a former football player for the great Hapoel Nicosia of Cyprus. It's no other than Mike Charalambous, who's the CDO at Threedium. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, guys.
I hope you got a bit of FOMO of us speaking out all these events at Shop Talk, for example, and you can join us next year.
I'm already getting FOMO from all the tan that you guys have going to all these great events, you know. And even though I'm Mediterranean, I'm a bit more transparent right now because I spend more time in New York.
Is that where you're based, in New York these days?
Yeah, I spent a good amount of my time in New York. That's where our biggest partnerships and biggest clients are based.
Fantastic. Well, there's worse places to be. Mike, can you tell us a bit, just to put like the things so that people know who you are and what you do? Can you tell us a bit about Threedium and what you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is not an easy answer because a lot of people cannot understand straight away what the tech does. But if we want to try and explain it as if it's a 10-year-old explanation,
That's what we need.
typically,
That Mike, that's our level. So
That you're
please.
talking our language.
No.
we typically say that we have built an end-to-end infrastructure powered by 3D, where we ultimately our every aspect of the product lifecycle for any brand and any enterprises that specialize in selling products. In very layman terms, we are leveraging the use of 3D files to be able to accelerate product conceptualization and prototyping, then use the same 3D files to enhance speed of manufacturing, then use the same 3D assets to create marketing content in the form of static renders, catalog imagery, CGI videos, and then use the same 3D files to then create more amplified and delightful experiences on customer-facing channels, such as real-time 3D viewers, more interactive experiences on websites. And very recently, we've also introduced an additional distribution aspect in our infrastructure, where the same 3D files are now sim-ready, and they can be deployed to train robots and humanoids to improve their ambidexterity around specific products, or to even understand how they should hold them and describe them to other human beings.
Are you telling me that 3D, and we're coming from Cannes, so we're very badly influenced about all the flashy things there. You're telling me that 3D is not only about marketing?
When we started, and naturally how we got the spotlight on the company, we also had this idea and notion that 3D is a key ingredient for marketing, and that's what got us in the front line of many discussions with enterprises. They were all trying to understand how they can leverage a CAD file or an existing 3D asset that they had to create CGI videos, 4K renders, different product placement, images that they can deploy on eCommerce, etc., etc. And that is definitely a great way to start using that technology. But as brands start to familiarize themselves more with what 3D capability actually entail, and as they start to educate a bit more about how 3D can tap into other forms of support in different departments, that's where the magic is being unlocked. And even though we started as a company that predominantly enhanced marketing, fast forward in 2026, we're now sitting in the epicenter of digital transformation for many of these large organizations who are leveraging our technology to further accelerate and optimize product development processes, manufacturing processes, and that is an exciting aspect to see our technology being able to evolve naturally across all these important facets of an organization.
And if I can add from an AWS perspective, that's certainly something that we're seeing a lot of interest in from our FMCG customers. Because typically that product innovation cycle can take up to 6 months, right? From that product brief to do the concepts, the design, the prototype, getting the user feedback. And a lot of this infrastructure that Mike and the team at Threedium are building helps to compress that and really is helping with the time to market on a lot of those tasks.
Marco, and forgot to ask, obviously, this is your second time on the podcast after the one that we did with Bodify? Maybe to remind the audience what you do at AWS.
Yeah, absolutely. So Marco, come drinks. I'm based in London. So I've been with AWS for around about 5 years now, and I lead partner solutions for retail. So essentially working closely with our ecosystem of partners, whether software consulting partners, and supporting them in co-building, co-marketing, co-selling their solutions to those industries. And I've had the pleasure of working with Mike and the team there for a little over a year. And not only do they have a great product, but they're a great team to work with as well.
Yeah. I second that. And it's a reciprocal kind of relationship between what we're building at AWS. We love every aspect of spending time with you guys.
Well, it's good to have you both on. As somebody who is still relatively new to the world of 3D, it's been already fascinating to hear you mention a couple of the different functions across the business where you guys are able to, in essence, bring value. Can you talk a little bit about some of those use cases in a bit more detail? So I just, in your comments as well as Marco, which you added as well, I jotted down, that you touch everything from product design, R&D, marketing, commercial and sales. So it really kind of runs the gamut of the value chain.
100%. And again, we did not start with that intent, but we've evolved to be able to cater this end-to-end requirement by the brands. And also, we do live in a world that, to succeed as a tech company in this environment, it is imperative that our technology is firm to prioritize the development of solutions that address immediate structural challenges and workflow inefficiencies for enterprises. And therefore, only by providing them an end-to-end solution that gives them the speed, the autonomy, the flexibility to quickly solve those challenges and being less dependent on fragmented individual solutions, that is basically how you thrive as a tech enabler, as a tech provider in this environment of agents and AI.
Can you give us specifically, like, what are you actually doing with companies in the different, because that's the thing. I think that for me, the first thing that called my attention is, okay, 3D, ignorant of me, I would have thought it was like purely like a marketing play, but clearly it has more. So if we break it down into different functions, and we can go slowly, what are different use cases and what does it actually look like?
I think to understand a solution is better to understand the problem. And I'll give you a very recent problem that we had to address from one of our largest FMCG partners.
Yeah.
So what happened to them last year was that they had to throw away 2 million of perfectly good conditioned shampoos in the Asian market. And this happened because when they shipped the packages and the shampoos in Asia, in the back side of the labels where the ingredients were jotted down, a few of those ingredients were supposed to be written in large cups, but they were written in small cups. And that immediately disqualified them from going through the FDA approvals. And it was cheaper for that brand to throw away 2 million bottles of shampoos instead of replacing the labels. So immediately the CFO was like, guys, what the heck is doing? Fix this. We cannot afford to just keep throwing away 2 million bottles of shampoos because it's cheaper to throw them away than replacing them with new labels. And that was one of the predominant use cases that we tried to solve with our infrastructure of allowing big global conglomerates to move fast in package design and package development. So by leveraging our technology where we are able to take a text, to take an image, or take a CAD file and compress it or optimize it to become a digital twin that anyone can, with zero technical ability, can go and customize. So imagine of a shampoo as an example, right? If I'm a marketeer, or if I'm an e-commerce person, or even if I'm a product designer and I have an idea about creating a new package, or I've been informed that there is a huge problem on one of the labels in the packages of a product that is already in the market, ready to go on the shelves. I just log onto my cloud platform from Threedium. I quickly take the preset of that 3D asset that it entails the dial line, all the information about the package. I quickly turn it around. I edit the labels. Maybe it's World Cup, so maybe I want to make it even more, World Cup E in terms of how it looks and feels. Maybe it's a lot of different. Or maybe it's Pride Month. Maybe I want to add a holographic foil that is a bit more Pride related, right? Boom. I have it ready. I have the marketing team or whoever approves the packages to come in and review, approve. And then all I need to do is just click an export button that exports the dial line and the new 3D asset, instantly upload it into my PLM to get it remanufactured and reprinted, and then have it ready to be shipped to market. So something that would typically take weeks and months and involve agencies to create a CAD file, agencies to create the dial lines, the internal teams to go and put stuff physically together, even physically having to create a prototype to understand, is this how it should look in real life? Is it good to go? All these things are just being eliminated. Everything is done through 3D on a cloud-based infrastructure, and it saves tons of money and tons of time for all these organizations to be agile and continue become relevant with trends, but also solving problems quickly.
Yeah. And, I think what's interesting about that too is, like you said, you're able to drive workflow efficiency, as you referenced before, because I imagine everybody's on that same platform. So you've got the design teams, the marketing team, the supply chain, like they're all being able to access those files. And, like you said, what would normally take days or weeks to facilitate in terms of the conversations can happen in a much more efficient sort of way.
100%. We just want to remove the kind of look and feel from the processes, right? Like make it as smooth and as joyful as possible for people to work and operate in this.
I know that's a big thing when you like talk about packaging in these companies is also like the regulatory topic, right?
Yes.
How do you go through that hurdle?
We tend to choose our battles, and we could spend a lot of time in R&D trying to solve it through automations and setting our own kind of frameworks and dependencies. But what we understood is that this is a very bespoke and specific thing per industry and per brand.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to have an off-the-shelf solution for that, what we typically do is that the agents that which we establish and integrate into this workflow. So let's say somebody is now leveraging our cloud infrastructure to go and design a package, and they want them to, and they ask the agents by prompting them to, hey, translate the label in French or translate the label in Korean. What we train the agents to do, thanks to AWS Bedrock and Agent Core, is that we tell them, hey guys, once you start translating, make sure you follow these kind of regulations and guidelines as provided by the specific brand. So we just fine tune the agents within the cloud as per the industry and as per the brand that decides to onboard and utilize the technology. We are not indemnified in any way in the FDA approvals, but we at least try to shorten or to provide, let's say, an 80% accuracy that the translations are FDA approved. And that's where you still need a human eyeball to review everything, make sure they're correct, that it's complying with whatever guidelines we've trained the agents to translate labels onto, and then green light to ship to market.
Got it. So I guess I'll play the role of the marketer
Yes.
in the room, and I'm curious to get your perspective. We talked a little bit about, like you said, how we can, how a brand can use the Threedium solution to be able to, in essence, drive workflow efficiency, improve flexibility, improve speed to market. I'm curious to see how do you see this applying to like let's start the further downstream in regards to how brands are engaging with consumers, right? And kind of going back to the point that Daniel was making earlier around, like, we tend to, our minds, particularly after Congo, to like, thinking 3D and like how that engages with consumers. But I'm just curious to understand, how do you see that right now in terms of like the current state of the relationship between brands and how they engage with consumers from an experiential standpoint?
To first analyze, to on a 50,000 feet overview to understand this relationship. And this is, this is my personal opinion. Feel free to argue with it. But I feel that there's no longer a real relationship between a brand and a consumer. Brands think that they have a relationship with consumers, but the reality is that the relationship is with the likes of Amazon, Google, ChatGPT, Anthropic, TikTok, Instagram, influencers, agents even. So that is the biggest problem. And a problem that's going to continue expanding, if you like, over the next couple of years, because there's lower and lower brand loyalty. People are just in love, or they tend to prefer the ease of the first option that they get once they go on a product discovery phase through ChatGPT or through Amazon or through Google or whatever has been trending on them on TikTok. And that's what they tend to go for because it just gives, for whatever reason, more confidence or higher purchase intent for them to go and buy it. And there's not a lot of things that brands can do other than just understand that this is the new way of shopping, the new way of product discovery. So they just need to follow these trends. And how do they follow these things? First and foremost, they need to make sure that their products are always shiny, are always intriguing, are always interesting, and they're very much in line with trends. If the trend is pride, then be pride related. If the trend is sustainability, then make sure your package is sustainable. If the trend is, I don't know, K-pop, make sure you have some sort of K-pop-esque elements on your packaging that will instantly draw attention. Then it's about the semantics, right? So how much metadata do you include in your marketing content before you publish it in the web, Is it discoverable by agents? Is it optimized enough to be able to show well within the Google or Amazon algorithm? And if you do embrace agentic research and search, what kind of information do you need and metadata do you need to be agent discoverable, right? And these are information that a 3D file always gives you the ability to entail, and you don't need to go through too many different hoops to make your products discoverable with agents. Because what happens with a 3D file? A 3D file, think about it as a living organism with its own brain. So every time you're morphing that 3D file to become, a new shampoo or a new pair of shoes, that information is being saved and it's being evolved within the 3D file. So it instantly understands that, hey, as a 3D file, I'm now a shampoo. I've got this dye line information wrapped in my file. I've got all these different materials wrapped in my 3D file, which is glass, plastic, whatever. And once you publish it live on eCom, it carries this metadata with it. So you don't need to have extra layers of agencies or people trying to optimize it, make it more agent ready, et cetera, et cetera. So it instantly allows the brands to publish content on the web that is instantly available for any agent to read it, and therefore being able to acknowledge it, and therefore being able to retrieve it and pass it for someone that specifically asks for a package, a shampoo that is made out of, plastic or glass, and it's from L'Oreal, and it's from Kiel, and I don't know. So these are the things that we try to instantly provide and embed within marketing content, so that once the brands are able to launch them on marketing phase or customer facing channels, they have this information ready, embedded, and are instantly able to make an impact in the market. At the same time, it's also the level of what you mentioned before, the experience. And because people are spending, they're not spending, but the amount of time that they're willing to give to any product or any brand is immensely small these days, right? Like they're going to come in, they're going to see if they're going to like what they're seeing, and maybe they're going to give you 10 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute, if you're very lucky, and then they judge you instantly, and then that is probably the only time you have to interact with them, and then they're gone. So having that ability to give them better images, better videos, dynamic content, even real-time 3D explorations, or allow them to even click to see the product in front of them through augmented reality. I don't know. Whatever rich media formats can get them to say, oh my God, this is a great experience. These guys care about me. That's what continues to amplify the purchase intent on an exit point, and hopefully getting them to add a product in the basket or saving it and then going and talking about it with their friends, having a word of mouth experience, and then hopefully driving more people on the site to experience whatever or see the product. This is how brands need to perceive the new era of consumer experience.
Mike, just to quickly add to that, because you raised at the very start really interesting point around that disintermediation. I really like some of the work that you're doing there in terms of creating those personalized configurations for some of the products as well, right? Because that also allows the brands to get closer to their customers as well, to the point you were raising at the end.
Yeah, I'm 100%. And we're seeing that as well, that hyper personalization, it's still something that matters a lot for consumers. And even though they might be heavily impacted, let's say, by a TikToker saying, hey, you have to go and buy this. Once they land on a site and once they start seeing that, oh my God, the site, the content is reactive to my needs, is reactive to what I'm asking to do. And it's tailor-making the whole, product experience to my needs, to my expectations. Oh my God, I'm in love. And we've been seeing this many, many times. And we've been seeing this through luxury, which is imperative for luxury. But we started seeing this as well with lower price goods, where you think that price elasticity is more important, let's say. But at the end of the day, it's always about the experience. If people really feel that a brand has tried a lot to give them a lot of information, a hyper-personalized experience, and has tried to give them an autonomy in the way that they're browsing a product, they tend to get them to buy it in the end.
I have a question. Are retailers ready? How are retailers ready to integrate this 3D tech of product packaging into their system, let's say?
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is probably a question that my answer is going to change every
day,
quarter, basically, or even every day, right?
Every retailer.
Even for us, we were not sure we were ready to go at scale, because this was something that happened overnight almost, when we started understanding what it means to go agent to agent on e-commerce, or agent to agent on transactions, or agent to agent on product discovery. And all these things are fairly new, but we were testing many things to understand whether a 3D file has enough metadata to accelerate agent to agent discovery, as opposed to an image that has, manually tagged stuff within when you feed an agent to understand and read it. So what we tried to do was first to build a hypothesis and try to solve it with some of our closest partners. And I think that is where the AWS relationship starts to become imperative for us, because having such a credible and such a powerful partner in the web that has these amazing relationships with the brand that they trust to do innovation with them, that allows us to have deeper, more meaningful discussions with brands and stakeholders within those brands and decision makers to start thinking big. So what we've done is that we've identified 3-4 really large, really impactful conglomerates that they have the appetite and the capital to invest and test. We've tested with them. We've tested the inference. We've tested the compute requirements. We've tested the scale of this whole thing. It took us a while. It took us almost a year to figure it out. But now we can easily say that we are building a platform that within a month of onboarding, any brand of any scale can just take it, plug it into their workflows, and run with it.
Oh no! And how do we know that this won't be another metaverse 2.0? Like, you remember, we're talking about Shop Talk, and I remember going with Efrain to Shop Talk 22 in London, and the big topic there was, I was kind of maybe dying off then. I think that it had its heyday during, but it was still there, like the whole metaverse thing as a way of where brands could intimately connect with their consumers in a virtual space. And that, we know what happened to that. How do we know? Yeah.
Look, there's a few things. So metaverse as a dream, it's like communism, let's say. They're great ideas. Can they work in practice? Probably not, I mean, Meta alone burned what, 80 billion in Reality Labs since 2020 to what? Give us, human avatars without legs, or, I don't know, having to live through some sort of VR glasses that create epileptic episodes. Like, when you try to force a change in behavior, That's where the biggest problem begins in terms of adoption, right? And I think that's what was the biggest failure of the metaverse, trying to enforce a change in consumer behaviors, in making people to shift attention from IRL into games, into whatever. You cannot just force an entire nation, an entire humanity to just go into something that they might not like, right? The difference with AI, because many elements of AI and metaverse are the same kind of elements that have built the hype and the bubbles, right? But the difference with AI is that it doesn't ask you to change anything, right? It shows up in your search bar. It shows up in your chat window and in the checkout flow, even in your cloud platforms now. You have an agent that just works alongside you. So it's just an easier way to embed it into your workflows, into your everyday life, without changing anything. And I think that is the biggest difference between why AI can thrive as a frontier tech as opposed to metaverse.
So, Marco, I'd love to understand from you how AWS supports Mike and Threedium on this journey in terms of all the things we just talked about in regards to it really embedding this as a core function into, let's call it day-to-day business at a brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're seeing with a lot of the brands that we work with is that they're moving away from experimentation with 3D around a number of different use cases that we've touched upon to actually deploying it at scale. And in order to deploy that at scale, as Mike was saying, you need some serious infrastructure. And at AWS, what we've done is we're investing in partners like Threedium because they're solving real problems for our shared customers, right? So how do you manage thousands of these 3D product assets, serve them globally with a low latency, and that actually delivers a commercial impact? And I think that's the key here as well, right? So on the one side, you've got this cloud scale challenge. On the other side, it's delivering a clear business use case with a tangible value at the end that you can measure in the metrics. And I think that's exactly where our partnership creates value.
Yeah, and that's the thing, AWS, I'm sure you see a lot of different business cases. Was there something specific about Threedium that made you decide, okay, let's go, this is the right partner for AWS?
I think there's a lot of different things, and that product innovation, the upstream element, I think is a really key component to also the downstream marketing. It has a broad applicability across a number of different segments, I would say. So, there's obviously a clear use case within fashion and luxury, but we're also seeing other brands experiment, which are perhaps less obvious. For example, spirits brands, right? So we're seeing experimentation where they're trying gift configurators or limited edition packaging, or even virtual bar experiences. And Diageo's done some exciting work in this space. So it's not obvious because, we're talking about bottles and everybody knows what a bottle looks like. But when you think about it, it's actually, the logic behind it makes sense, because if you're in the spirits industry, then that premium packaging is a huge part of the end customer's purchase decision. And it's really hard to convey that in a flat image on the retailer's website. And, you can take that logic and apply it to other categories as well, like perfumes and so on. So, the listeners right now are probably thinking of lots of other different categories that would be relevant to them as well.
To echo on Marco's point, because is very valid and very much a reality of today. If you ask any of the large conglomerates, who's your competitor, they're always going to say the new small guys that come up with shiny products that we don't have the time or the speed to go and compete with. And they spark attention from TikTokers and from, Gen Zs. So these are the people that are eating the lunch right now from the established FMCG brands, the small and nimble, that they're able to do something innovative in terms of how they portray their products, their packaging, their positioning on shelves, because they're less regulated, they have less ring fencing, these are ultimately the biggest competitors from established FMCG brands right now.
And if you talk about FMCG, what would you say is the main low-hanging fruit? I mean, you're the specialist in what you do. and the FMCGs are clearly not. So you can quickly see like what is the low hanging fruit, where are they leaving like money on the table, as Marco said, like where's their business, where are they having like a business impact by not adopting this technology?
The low hanging fruit for the large, like, just understand the question. Are we referring to what's the low hanging fruit opportunity for the large enterprises, or where's the low hanging fruit for any brand in the FMCG?
Yeah, I think. Well, look, let's talk about the big ones first, and if you see like something generalized in the industry, let's cover it second. But most of our audience works in the big companies, like we're over $1 billion.
Yeah, I think the low hanging fruit is so. There's two ways thinking about the low hanging fruit. One is the efficiencies that you can immediately introduce and the large ROIs that you can have in your product development aspect as a company, right? And that is what we are seeing, at least from a 3D perspective. Like, can you instantly deploy our cloud infrastructure and start seeing cost savings in terms of shipping and logistics and prototyping, accelerating the speed to market of different products that you have, from prototyping to having them on a shelf. The latter is a big low-hanging fruit. In what sense? Consumer trends are changing like crazy. That the speed of which a new consumer trend shows up every week, every month is insane. And are the large enterprises capable and agile enough to be able to meet those consumer changing trends fast enough? That's the kind of infrastructure that we are providing them. So if the next Demon Hunters or the next, Stranger Things pops up, are they ready to have an infrastructure that allows them to make their products, their packaging, their storytelling, fast enough, adjacent enough to capture those trends, and therefore capture the demand in sales at the peak of it?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, what I was jotting down vigorously as you were talking was efficiency and speed. But I think being able to provide agility to some of the big FMCG enterprises that Daniel was referring to, like you said, you're wanting to remove some of the yuck from the some of these internal processes that I think we all kind of shake our heads at, for those of us who are in these big brands. So obviously we've talked a little bit earlier about AWS. Marco, from your perspective, the value you see in partnering with Threedium. I kind of want to turn the question around and turn it over to you, Mike, and ask you, what is the benefits you see in partnering with AWS in this journey?
Look, as mentioned, one of the key advantages that we started seeing as we maturing this partnership is the fact that we have a bigger audience to be heard within. People that AWS has worked incredibly well over the past 20, 30 years to be able to position themselves as the most robust, the most reliable cloud solution in the world, right? And all these organizations simply just trust it. They trust the technologies that they vet. They trust the ecosystems that they're building. Even the tech providers that they vet to bring along and sit with them on the table. And for the first time ever, as a company, we, referencing football, we feel that we're now playing in the Champions League, working with AWS. Before AWS, we were still playing in League 2 or the Championship of the UK football, right? But the moment that AWS came in and scouted us and trained us, and they took us for a summer preseason training with them, we came back and we're now playing Champions League because of that. That's the analogy, right? And to be more specific, what AWS allows us to do is to research faster and more meaningfully. So we try to find deeper problems and provide more meaningful solutions faster. They help us to accelerate our go-to-market and our top-line pipeline growth by introducing us to all these amazing enterprises. And that's where we need to show them that we are a reliable partner and we're never going to expose them by messing anything up, right?
And so if a brand is listening to this is for both of you, and it's like, wow, I'm really intrigued by this, would like to learn how it works in practice. What does the process look like? And we leave both your links of your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, but how does it look like to engage with Threedium and AWS?
I can start from our side. We are listed as an AWS marketplace solution. We've got our vetted account executives across the world that they understand Threedium, that they have easy access to our team. So anyone that requires to find out more about Threedium, all they need to do is just either reach out through the AWS marketplace or reach out through their AWS account reps, and we'll have our first scoping session explaining about what to do, how we can integrate into their existing workflows, and then map out typically a pilot process. And if they're happy from there on, we discuss how they can scale the infrastructure accordingly.
Yeah. Marco, what would you say? Also, you work across implementing different solutions, different retailers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's exactly it, as Mike was saying. So Threedium available on AWS Marketplace. And that's where a lot of our customers are purchasing software right now. It's fast and it's easy to procure. And the reason for that is actually quite practical. It's pretty mundane, but practical. So if you already have an AWS account and you have an existing enterprise agreement with AWS, then the purchases will count against a committed cloud spend. All right. So instead of opening a brand new vendor relationship and going through separate procurement cycles, separate security views, and so on, it consolidates it under your existing AWS contract. And for a lot of enterprises, what that means is that instead of going through this, long 6 months procurement process, it can be vastly shortened. You get your unified billing and so on. And it's very mundane, but what we see is that procurement friction typically tends to kill a lot of pilots, a lot more than technology. So we try to remove the barriers to that and make it as easy as possible.
I've witnessed that. They've done for us as well. So yeah, I second that.
Great. Efrain, I think you wanted to ask the last one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think the question would be,
are we wrapping up now?
Well, I think it would be, we can kind of pose it to ourselves,
okay.
But saying, it sounds like, given everything that Marco and Mike have said, and, I'm sure we've got people listening who are saying, yes, I want to learn more. What are the big things that we take away from this conversation?
Yeah, I think that from what we've talked about today, I think that it's time for a culture change in major companies, right? I think that being agile is a must. And as you said, Mike, I think to compete with small companies, you need that agility, right? And I think that your use case is a great one of also adopting technologies that may have started for marketing, but what use case can they have for the whole value chain?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I take that away in that this is, to use an American expression, from soup to nuts of the value chain, because we talked about everything from, product design and development through to consumer and shopper engagement. And even training. We didn't really touch on that, but we did reference it at the very, very beginning. So it's literally the entire value chain. The other thing I took away from this was that I think the technology that Threedium and AWS are able to bring to market with this is able to not only facilitate, let's call it, some of the more important consumer touch points that we already have in terms of packaging. And I know directly from research that I've just done the importance that packaging has in regards to when shoppers are making decisions at the point of sale, but how they're thinking about brand websites and online content as well in terms of driving decisions both online but offline as well. So it certainly helps with that in terms of making that a much more engaging experience, but it's also what it brings in terms of this agent to agent product discovery that you were referencing, Mike, in terms of making sure that data is agent friendly, but you're also using it to make it that the content much more dynamic as well. And the fact that you're able to improve how we engage with both humans and machines is really, really strong. It's a very strong value proposition.
I think it's interesting as well, because in the marketing world, we talk about like the collapse of the funnel, as in, top of the funnel, like marketing and performance marketing now being like very ambiguous. I think that with this podcast, it's also reinforced the fact that like, it's also the collapse of like internal silos, right? So something that will change your marketing effort will also affect your supply chain, and will also affect your finance, will also affect your IT. So I think that that's like a huge, and that's why I think that you said like smaller companies have like a winning hand in this, and big companies have to catch up, because it's just like a big change. And that's why probably we're seeing as well across the board a lot of personal changes and just a lot of confusion in the industry. So I think it's interesting to see the perspective of you guys, both AWS and Threedium, as a trusted partner to these companies, of how they can transform and just be more impactful with their consumers.
100%. And a closing statement that I want to infer is that very, very adjacent to what you're saying, is that for me, the brands that are going to win in the next 5 years or decade, if you like, are not the ones that are going to have the most fanciest and the best flagship store on Bond Street, right? They'll be the ones whose product data and AI can actually trust and act upon. And that is how brands and all the boardrooms of all these FMCG companies should be thinking as a priority.
But also,
strategy.
how crazy is it that you guys, like, your specialty is 3D, that also like the data piece is so centerpiece to what you do, right? Like that for me is fascinating. I also like the fact that you mentioned that there's no longer a real relationship between the brand and the consumer.
I would, as the brand guy in the room, I would actually debate, but that'll be a separate podcast episode, because I don't know.
We're all for the controversy. So Mike and Marco, thanks for joining us again. This was like very interesting. We learned a lot. I think our audience will as well. Marco, I don't know if you want to say something as well.
No, it's been fun. Thank you for having us. It's been great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Efrain, I think we'll leave this conversation, dare to say, with a, it can even compete with what we learned in Cannes. So not bad at all.
I think it leaves us wanting to learn more, which is always the sign of a good conversation.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks to all our audience for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from Dwyer Partners SL, doing business as the FMCG Guys, or the individual author, host, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Dwyer Partners SL. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Dwyer Partners SL expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we presented in this podcast.